We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. First thing on the agenda is, we do have a quorum. Excuse me. First thing on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes from March 20th. Co-Chair Swedzinski?
Yes, Chair Acom, I move the minutes from March 20th, 2025.
Great. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails and the minutes are adopted. We've got 4 bills on the agenda today. We're going to switch it up just a little bit to get some of the bills from outside of the committee up first so they can get back. So first on the agenda is House File 2498 with Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger. Whoa, don't drop your computer. That was close. Welcome to committee, Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger. While you're getting settled, I will go ahead and move House File 2498 be laid over for possible inclusion. And there's an author's amendment coded the A1. So I'll go ahead and move the A1 also to get the bill in the shape that we would like. Any questions on the A1 before we go ahead and approve that? Seeing none, all those in favor of the A1 say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. All right, with all of that, Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger, welcome to committee. Go ahead and tell us about your bill.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon. It's good to be back. I miss a lot of your faces since I was on energy last session, but not this one. So thanks for having me back again. So thank you for the opportunity to present about some geothermal rebate program. This is basically to help kind of Minnesota continue leading the way when it comes to thermal energy networks. And this is really gonna help kind of address the next big chunk we have for decarbonization, our heating sector. This bill focuses mostly on the bigger parcels, so like commercial multifamily buildings that I feel would be most efficient and most effective for our use of money. We also have some good parameters in here to include a max of $100,000 for a project or 15% of the project. And if you'll notice kind of in the A1 amendment, thank you for adopting that, we did put a dollar amount in there for $5 million for RDA or general fund just to kind of give some flexibility. I know the budget is a little tricky this year. And then the last part we added, thank you to Representative Jones for taking a look and helping me out with some finer technicalities. Should there be any energy audit findings, up to 10% of that rebate awarded could be used to help address those, again, to just make sure that everything is going to be the most efficient and effective for a system, but I don't want people using all the money to use it for weatherization. We want to make sure it's using it for the intent that we want. And then lastly, before I hand it over to the testifiers, I feel that this is a really great next step for entities that have utilized the successful local government geothermal planning grants. So again, I'm a big ecosystem kind of person, so the more that we can kind of chain these together and really make them work, I think is just effective and efficient. So with that, I have 2 testifiers and then I'll be ready for questions.
Great. We're going to welcome to committee Aurora Vatran from the 100% campaign. Welcome to committee. Go ahead, introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Chair Acom, Chair Swedzinski, my name is Aurora Vatran, and I'm the Legislative Director for 100%. I am also on the PUC's Thermal Energy Network Deployment Work Group, created by legislation Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger championed last session to figure out how our utilities can best deploy thermal energy networks to meet the heating and cooling needs of Minnesotans. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of House File 2498, a bill to create a geothermal rebate program in Minnesota and help us take the next step in leading the way on thermal energy networks. Last week, this committee heard a bill to allocate more funds to the local government planning grant program, needed because in its first year, it had demand for almost twice the amount it was originally allocated. This rebate program would enable those local governments, along with others interested in geothermal for their commercial buildings and multifamily residences, to move past planning and into building and benefiting Minnesotans. Geothermal technology is not new, but the use of it at scale to help us transition our building sector to clean heating and cooling is. Our state has been thoughtful about our approach, and this bill would help us take the next step into being a nation leader in carbon-free heating and cooling. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bachman. Next, for testifying, we have Willie Miley with Darcy Solutions. Welcome back to committee. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Chair Acom and Chair Swizitsky and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Willie Miley. I'm the Regulatory Director at Darcy Solutions. We are an energy technology company focusing on groundwater-enabled geothermal heating and cooling systems. Our company grew out of technology that was initially developed at the U of M, and we're based in New Brighton, Minnesota. We support this bill because it will accelerate the widespread adoption of geothermal heating and cooling across Minnesota. Increasing the use of geothermal HVAC systems not only significantly lowers carbon emissions, but will also reduce the need to build additional power generation and expand the electric grid. As buildings throughout our economy continue to further electrify, more overall power capacity is needed and higher stresses will be put on the grid during peak times. But because geothermal HVAC systems tap into the constant thermal source available underground, they require much less electricity than other types of HVAC systems when demand for heating and cooling is peaking on the hottest and coldest days. Simply put, more geothermal systems means less future electric grid build-out, which will result in lower costs for all ratepayers across the state. Building HVAC needs are unique, and decisions on HVAC system upgrades to increase efficiency and reduce carbon emissions need to be made by each individual building owner. A similar rebate program already exists in Minnesota to incentivize air source heat pumps. By also providing rebates for geothermal systems, Minnesota building owners will have more options to install the efficient HVAC system that makes the most sense for their particular building. Thank you, Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger, for authoring this impactful bill for incentivizing energy-efficient and cost-effective geothermal HVAC systems. I respectfully urge the committee members to please advance this bill. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Miley. Any comments or questions from members of the committee? Chair Swedzinski.
Thank you. My question would be to Mr. Miley, the last testifier there. Do you find it from your business model that folks are either going to do this or not? So if they're either going to make a decision to put a traditional propane or natural gas type furnace in or a boiler in for these types of buildings, do you feel that if it wasn't for this particular thing, they won't? Like if this didn't exist, they just wouldn't do it? Or are they making that decision anyway, and we're just buying that cost down for those folks that would do it anyway?
Mr. Miley.
Thank you, Chair Acom, Chair Swedzinski. It's really on a project-by-project basis. I think there are certainly projects where this cost incentive would help make the project financials make sense for the property owner. We serve a lot of different property owners, property types, from nonprofits through government and institutional buildings. So I think it would make an impact for some projects.
Chair Swedzinski.
Thank you. It's just, my question kind of surrounds, if the government's if it's a government entity, are they making a choice, because they're designing the project with or without this particular credit that would go towards paying it down? Like, are they coming to pre-design, so as they're designing it before they're even contemplating it, and then designing the geothermal, or because, I'm kind of like, what came first, the geothermal unit or the egg or the chicken? You kind of get what I'm saying?
Mr. Miley, and I don't know if maybe after that, Representative
Yeah,
Hemmingsen-Jaeger may have a comment as well, but Mr. Miley, do you want to go first?
Yeah, Chair Acom, Chair Swedzinski. I think for many projects that are already in progress, the decision was made, and this incentive was not part of the, incentives such as this would not been part of the project financial calculations, but I know there are, some projects that we go through cost analysis, and and the upfront cost is at a level that is not going to work for the project financials. So in those circumstances, for those property owners, I think an incentive like this would be meaningful. Upfront, as part of the cost analysis when going down the initial path for project development.
Okay.
And Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger, did you have anything to add to that?
Yes, please. Yeah, so I kind of see where you're going, and I've kind of had the same thoughts as well, chicken or egg. And I think about like my city of Woodbury. So we're not fully developed yet, and Woodbury is one of our big 3 priorities is like environmental stewardship. So they're looking to electrify their fleets. This could be one thing where, as they're looking ahead, they could be thinking about, oh, well, we can, to not have so much cost burden be on our citizens, we can look at like interaction with like federal grants. We can look at these local government geothermal planning grants, and then we can actually have a rebate program to kind of help Woodbury maintain like their priority for environmental stewardship, but also kind of alleviate some of that cost burden from the citizens.
Sure.
Great. Any follow-up?
And that just, and this would be a question, maybe I'm not sure who could answer it, but, we talked about the funds that were spent last year, and there was a lot of folks wanting to get them. Did you find that they were mostly new construction that were applying to be, or was this like potentially re-up? So let's say it was an existing apartment complex, and they had a timed out, it's a 20 or 30-year-old building, and they were gonna say, hey, we're not gonna replace it with natural gas, but we'd like to do it with geothermal. Do we track how those dollars were spent? Was it new construction, or was it retrofit, or was it even folks that just said, hey, it exists, let's do it even though the furnace isn't broken? I don't know if that's been looked at, or
And
who
so,
would answer that?
Chair Swazinski, do you mean the planning grants from last year that were passed and that kind of an analysis? Because
Yeah.
this program wasn't passed last
Yep.
year, but.
I know this is brand new, but I'm just from a planning grant process, what
Right.
did we see through those, who took the money? Was it retrofits? Was it new construction? Do we know what that, I didn't see that information, so.
Right, that's a good question. I know when we had the bill last week that was putting additional funds into that program, we did hear from testifiers, was it Department of Commerce maybe, that talked about how many grants came in, how many they were able to fund, and that it was well above. I don't recall those kind of specifics, but I think we can probably find that information unless I don't presume the testifiers have that. Maybe they do, but
Or
I
if
see
someone's
them
from the department.
conferring.
Yeah. I don't know if they have that.
Any,
Yeah, I
Mr.
can take
Miley?
that. Chair Acom, Chair Swazinski. So we've been tracking that program closely, and the awards have not been made yet. That'll happen over the next couple of weeks, so we really don't know at this point. But like I've been involved in helping some property owners prepare their applications, and for example, I know the city of Minneapolis put in an application that included the Kmart redevelopment site on Lake and Nicollet, so that I believe would be a new build. And I'm sure there's other projects that are retrofit type projects also. I would imagine they'd all be new build.
Great. Chair Swazinski.
And then just to finalize, I just kind of quick glancing over the bill, does it have anything with where the projects would be? I know you kind of have a duality potential from how the fund is spent, whether it's RDA funds or general funds. Is there anything specific that the project would have to happen within XL rate range? And then is there anything to do with rural versus metro when those projects are potentially would have access to these funds? Is there kind of an even split, or is it kind of either or just, yeah?
Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
Yeah, so my understanding with the RDA was have to be in XL territory. I don't have anything specified for like Metro versus Greater Minnesota. Again, just kind of if you're basing it off some of like the land planning grants or some of the costs, like, there's some here from Minneapolis, like Sabathani, but I also have one here for Winona. So I would think that kind of in that process, they would looking at the project, looking at locations to make sure we do have an even distribution.
Great. Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger, for bringing this forward. My question might be better served by one of your testifiers, but maybe you also. Do you know, and this is almost like a trick question, what the average cost of is doing a geothermal installation would be?
Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
So looking at my same numbers, excellent question, because I was wondering the same thing. Again, the disclaimer, all depends on the size and the project. But so here, my notes say Sabathany was 188,000 square feet, approximately $12 million cost, but it also includes some building upgrades. The school I mentioned in Winona, Jefferson Elementary, is about 93,000 square feet for a cost of 1.1 million. So I think it kind of depends on the square footage, which I have that number. It's like 15 to 20. Oh, there it is. Okay. So numbers indicate $15 to $20 per square foot, but again, it depends on the disclaimer of building type, projects, stuff like that.
Representative Hollins.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that answer. That's really helpful for me to get an idea of how far that money will go. The other question I had was, in a lot of these renewable projects, we see that there is a cost savings measure within a certain framework, right? When there's a certain amount of time of installation. Do you or either of your testifiers know what that generally looks like?
Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger? Or
I
do you
don't have
wanna-
that number off the top of my head. Perhaps my
I
testifier
bet
does.
Mr. Miley does.
Yeah, Chair Acom, Chair Swazinski. So for Darcy Solution Geothermal projects, the project payback timeline is forecasted to be 5 to 10 years. So because the operational costs of geothermal systems are much lower than conventional HVAC systems, they use a lot less energy. Actual maintenance work is a lot less and a lot less costly. Within 5 to 10 years, the project would pay for itself.
Any follow-up, Representative Hollins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I think this is great. Like giving people an opportunity and a little bit of assistance and being able to invest in something that is eventually going to be both cleaner for the environment and make financial sense for them is fantastic. And of course, I particularly love the focus on low-income entities or houses. I think that's really important because we know the energy cost is a huge burden for a lot of people, especially who are low income. And so if we can do anything to assist in that burden, I think that's a good thing. So thank you so much.
On the list, we have Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Hollins kind of took my question there, so thank you for that. I was going to ask about return on investment as well. And you mentioned between 5 and 10 years. And a 5-year payback is really pretty good for an investment of this size. And to me, it kind of asks the question, do we need the rebates for a system that would pay for itself, give or take within 5 or 6 years? Because you mentioned they're much more efficient, both in terms of electricity usage and natural gas. So that was just my question, my comment kind of answered. So thank you.
Did you want to comment at all, Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger?
I appreciate the thought and appreciate the question. And I think, where it comes down to me is like, we're trying to help out like municipalities, local governments, nonprofits. So try to get them kind of like over that hump to, make that decision. One more, thing to be like, this is a great idea. Let's do it. We'll get the payback in 5 to 10 years and it'll be worth it.
Great. Next on our list, next on our list, we have Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. My question is what's the average life of a geothermal system?
Great. Mr. Miley?
Yeah, Chair Acom, Chair Swazinski. So it depends on the type, style of geothermal system. Conventional geothermal systems have a lifespan that is at least as long, comparable to a conventional HVAC system. For Darcy geothermal systems, we don't have a large amount of significant equipment that has moving parts involved in it. The biggest part of the infrastructure of a system is a water well, and they last 50-plus years, often up to 100 years. Our heat exchangers we anticipate them to last at least 30 years, at which time you can just change it out in the well. So geothermal systems, if built properly, typically do last longer than conventional, fossil fuel powered HVAC systems, and Darcy systems we expect to last 50-plus years.
Representative Murphy, did you have any
Thank you,
follow-up?
Madam Chair. Yeah, that's great. I have one, and that's probably about 15 years old. And yeah, I think it's going to run for a long, long time. But my question is, Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger, you talked about reducing the cost for our citizens. Well, who pays for it then if it's reducing the cost for citizens?
And before I pass it over, maybe I have a question, well, I'll let you answer that question, then maybe I'll follow up with one. Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
Yeah, so very good question because it all goes into like, the tax system. But what I was thinking more top of mind was as far as like the city financing in terms of like levies.
Did you have a follow-up? Chair?
Yeah, just in general, every dollar we spend here, looking at we're in tight conditions with funding, every dollar we spend here comes from somewhere. You're really the same person you're hoping to help really is the same person that's paying it. It's just a matter of if you're trying to pick a winner and loser in the deal. The payback on this in my system is good. It's definitely worth the investment. It doesn't need to have an incentive if it can pay for itself on the side, especially when you're looking at a 50-year product and you're talking about a 5 to 10-year payback. I don't know why we're incentivizing that. Did we incentivize the telephone or electricity? No, it was a good deal. That's why we did it. I have another question, if I could.
On this, I'm going to just ask a quick follow-up tied on to your return on investment. And I think one of the challenges with many people or entities, local units of government, is that initial investment and that it's not being on par, that it's more expensive than the HVAC system. My question was, what is the cost then to the facility after that return on investment? How does that monthly energy cost to run the geothermal compare with the fossil fuel HVAC system? So are there cost savings from after you get to that return, pay off that return on investment? Is it a less expensive or on par to HVAC, if that makes sense? Mr. Miley.
Yeah, Chair Acom. I'll just add, I'll echo what Chair Acom said about, there's a high capital cost to install a geothermal system. It's much higher cost, the initial project development and installation costs versus conventional HVAC. So that's one reason why incentivizing it is helpful. But then, like I mentioned, the operating costs are much lower, and the energy use and cost savings is typically 25 to 50% for a geothermal system versus a conventional HVAC system. So after that payback period, you continue to see the cost savings throughout the life of the system.
Great.
But
That's
again,
helpful.
the incentive is really helpful for the very high capital cost to put in these systems.
Right. Any final questions?
Yeah, so my electric bill dropped a lot, only because it runs this really little small motor to make it work. That's just basically to move the water in a circle, and the water does itself. And so the incentive to me is that I looked at my electric bill, and that's how the payback happens. The payback happens on what you save on your electric bill. So that was the incentive for me, is I could save on my electric bill, so it was a smart purchase. It doesn't necessarily mean that all my neighbors should benefit from my smart purchase. They can have their own smart purchase on their side. I just have one more follow-up question, Representative Kim.
Go ahead.
So we're looking at our carbon goal. So what does it look like when we get there in 2040 to 2050 when we make these changes?
Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger, did you understand the question? You're looking puzzled.
I'll try. So I guess when I think about this being, just a piece of that, we can decrease our fossil fuel consumption, we can utilize technologies like solar and wind and geothermal. And, when we get to that goal in 2040, I'm thinking it's gonna be a cleaner environment. Our kids will have less asthma, we'll have, better environments around us, and, we'll just be able to have, be able to breathe easier and interact with our environment much easier. And, for my kids and grandkids and your kids and grandkids.
And then maybe I will just follow up on that as we are looking to decarbonize and looking to rely less on fossil fuels, I think programs like this that are helping to not socialize the payment, but make it better understood by general public, I think those are great opportunities to help jumpstart us in that direction. So
Just one last
any
follow-up.
final question before we move on to
Yeah, I'll
other
just make
questions?
a comment. Typically we're at 416 parts per million of carbon now. And I just like to have somebody tell me what it's going to look like, because the goal was carbon reduction. If it was emissions, that's completely, everybody's on par with that. But the whole goal is carbon. So tell me what the 416 is going to look like on 2040 and 2050. We'll have a lot more people on this side of the fence that have an idea of what you're looking for. Just the bottom line is that, you know, this is an incentive to set up certain people to take advantage of this, but the product itself can work by itself. We don't need to incentivize something that's going to work and already has a good return on investment. Thank you.
Representative Carroll.
You know, in the interest of time, I'll pass, and I'll just follow up with Co-Chair Swedzinski on my own. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger, for bringing this. I think I just have more comments than anything. I'm very supportive. Representative Murphy, you know, the incentivizing subsidization discussion, we can have that when we stop subsidizing fossil fuels in this country to the tune of $760 billion per year. So we are subsidizing fossil fuel electricity in a huge way and comparatively, we hardly do anything for renewable energy. You know, what does it look like when we hit our goals? Well, you know, I think it's 3,000 to 4,000 people die a year from air impacts that are impacted by air pollution in Minnesota. So we can start addressing that. The other thing we'll do is geothermal, like other renewables, doesn't depend on fuel. There's no fuel cost. So we remove this huge source of inflationary pressures from our economy. Every period of inflation since World War II has been caused by fossil fuels, and that's from Moody's. You know, carbon parts per million, we need to get back to 350. That's where the world goes back at energy balance. Now, this program, you know, we talk about why do you do it up front and things like that. Well, we certainly know there's a significant cost up front. But we did a program, I mean, somewhat similar to this in St. Louis Park a few years ago. And we wound up putting about $110,000 of city money to incentivize solar. And it seems like 15%, you know, that was about the cap of what you would spend. It was, you know, 4 to 6% of the cost. We spent that $110,000 of city money, and it created $2.7 million of private investment. So one of the benefits of these types of programs is you let people know they're there. There's some time limit. It can get people moving. It can be a marketing aspect of it. So I think this is great. This is a wise investment for us from a societal perspective with where we need to go. And I just really appreciate you bringing this bill. Thanks.
Next on the list, Representative Sexton.
Thank you, ma'am. My question is, we've kind of danced around it, but since I serve on capital investment, we're seeing a lot of costs for great ideas we had in the 70s and 80s for multifamily coming back to us in the form of we need more money to replace boilers and things like that. It seems like that's going to be redoing this excessive cost all over again 30 years from now. Can you comment on, you talked about the life cycle being longer, 30 to 50 years than typical, but what significant costs are replacing the system? Are there certain components that if they go bad early are going to be a significant cost to whoever actually is trying to manage that building?
Mr. Miley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Acom, Chair Swedzinski. For the Darcy geothermal system, there are not really many moving parts. So there's a submersible pump that's down in the well. That's the same type of pump that's in a water supply well. Those are standard parts. They replace typically between like 7 and 15 years, around 10 years. It's just routine maintenance. Like I said, our heat exchanger would, we estimate that would be replaced about every 30 years. That's about a day's worth of work to pull the equipment out of the well and replace that. Yeah, I'm not an expert on the inside building HVAC mechanicals. I'm sure there'd be a little more often that they would need to be replaced, but it's less mechanical parts than a fossil fuel based like boiler system. So I can't say specifically what it is, but I know it's less maintenance cost, and I would assume less maintenance, periodic, less time between maintenance events also for the heat exchange equipment that's in the building.
Follow-up, Representative Sexton?
Absolutely. So we talked about the submersible pump. What's it cost to have somebody come out, potentially with a crane, get in there, pull the old pump out, put the new one in, that's usually an unforecast cost, right? What would that typically be?
Mr. Miley?
Yeah, Chair Acom. I would say, it is a forecasted cost. It's known that it's going to happen, say, every 10 years approximately. And I believe the cost for that is around $15,000, just estimate, ballpark.
Mr. Representative Sexton?
That seems like a significant cost to somebody's budget now, a small or medium-sized multifamily housing unit. You don't know if it's going to happen one year or the next. You don't really have insurance for that. So I'm just concerned overall that it's a good idea to give the incentives. Geothermal is a good technology, but then we walk away and we, as legislatures, and we do other things, and now we are burdening someone potentially with some future costs that may be out of cycle that are very hard to forecast, very hard to deal with once they occur. That's just my biggest concern.
I thank you for that. I think that's being thoughtful and thinking long-term, and I would hope that many of the entities that take this or utilize this option would take some of the savings that they would have by utilizing this, and after they've finished that kind of return on investment, and put towards a maintenance kind of fund to help. But I think that your point is a really good one, and that we should all be thoughtful about short-term and long-term investments.
I would agree, Chair Acom, but we haven't seen it yet.
Well, I think maybe we could have discussions about that. But Representative Igo, you're next on the list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is just getting at payback again, because, Minnesota is unique that we have such stable geology, but because we have such stable geology and because we're so cold, our groundwater is incredibly cold. Our ground is cold. So I was just wondering, how does that affect the payback, right? Because like a place where I'm from, your average groundwater temp, your ground temp is anywhere from 37 to 39 degrees. So how does that play into the payback on a system?
Mr. Miley.
Chair Acom, Chair Swazinski. The way the groundwater temp impacts our system design performance is, it's factored in when the system is first engineered. So it doesn't really, the groundwater temperature doesn't necessarily go to the, cost performance of the system. I guess it would impact efficiency overall. But yeah, I'm not the HVAC engineer, so I don't know specifically how, in detail how that affects it, but there's assumptions and calculations that go into the design, and it's built around the groundwater temperature. And in Minnesota, the range of groundwater temperature does not significantly influence the efficiency of our systems. That can be different in places where there's more extreme groundwater temperature difference between what your heating and cooling load is. But in Minnesota, it's not a significant driver of efficiency or cost to operate the system.
Follow-up, Representative Igo?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Acom. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. So I want to just know, the efficiency factor of one of these units. If it's in, if the ground temps are lower, what is the efficiency of the system then? Because I'm trying to just argue whether or not, yes, I think you're hearing from both sides that geothermal has its benefits, and I'm not denying that, but I also want to make sure that if we're going to be putting in taxpayer dollars, ratepayer dollars to a program, that we're making sure they're being spent in an efficient way. So I'm just trying to figure out how efficient these systems are when the ground is very cold.
Any additional follow-up, Mr. Miley?
Yeah, Chair Acom, Chair Swazinski. One of the main powerful aspects of geothermal systems is that the ground temperature or groundwater is pretty constant throughout the year, quite constant. And so you can design a system that relies on that constant temperature throughout the year, and there are not significant peaks or valleys in the thermal output of the system. And so that drives the system to be more efficiency because you can select equipment around that, your constant thermal load that you're getting from underground.
Great. Anything else? Representative?
Chair, I was kind of just looking for an efficiency factor. If you have a percentage or anything you can give me about how efficient these systems are.
And do they have that kind of data, or, Mr. Miley?
The reason I ask is because if I buy a furnace, right, a furnace says, it's 97% efficient for what I'm putting into it. So I just want to know what a geothermal system would look like in Minnesota for efficiency.
Yeah, Chair Acom, Chair Swazinski.
Thank you, Mr. Miley.
So yeah, again, I'm not HVAC engineer, but I think, so we're looking at a term that's called COP, coefficient of, or is it? Yeah, all right, thank you. Coefficient performance. Geothermal systems have, I think, a 3 to 4 COP, which is 300 to 400% efficient, versus a 90, say, high efficiency gas powered system would be 95, to 98% efficiency.
Sounds pretty efficient. Thank you. Thank you. Final questions, Representative Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger, for bringing this forward. It's pretty exciting. I did want to get a little bit more to that efficiency piece that Representative Murphy had brought up because of this concern of of what are the impacts to neighbors. And I think the efficiency piece is where the benefit actually resides. Whether or not it's an air source heat pump or a ground source heat pump, that efficiency piece benefits us all. So if I have a home and it only needs 100 units of energy, and I'm powering it by even a very high efficiency, 95% efficient furnace, it's going to take 105 units of energy to energize that home. If I'm energizing or heating, 100 units of energy with a ground source heat pump, it's 4 times more efficient. I only need 25 units of energy to heat the whole place. So that's a difference of 105 to 25, and that's just from efficiency. And so that means that the amount of load that needs to be provided, or not load, the amount of capacity that needs to be provided to that building is 80 units of energy less. And so that means that there are fewer power plants that we need to construct in order, and fewer upgrades that we need to make to transmission and distribution lines. So that is a benefit to everyone in the system.
Thank you for those very helpful comments, Representative Jones. Any closing comments, Representative Hemmingsen-Jaeger?
No, I really appreciate the time. I appreciate the thoughtful questions, and I look forward to earning your support as this gets laid over.
Great. With that, the bill is laid over. Next on our agenda, we have House File 2366, which is being authored by Representative Wolgamott, who is not able to be with us today. So in his place, we have Representative Hollins, who will join us. And while they're getting settled, let's see. Representative Hollins moves that House File 2366 be laid over for possible inclusion. And so thank you for stepping in for Representative Wolgamott, and please go ahead and tell us about the bill.
Should I do my Wolgie impression?
Sure, yes, please do, please do.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, thank you so much for having me today. I'm here to present with the nitty-gritty city, St. Cloud.
Nitty-gritty Granite City.
Shoot. Oh. Don't show him that, okay. I'm here to present House File 2366, which is an RDA appropriation for St. Cloud's battery system. We appreciate you taking the time today to hear this bill. This is a first-of-a-kind, nation-leading project taking place in Rep. Wolgamott and Rep. Perryman's districts. With me today, I have Tracy Hodel, the Public Service Director for the City of St. Cloud, who's been leading efforts on this project for the last 3 years. And once this project is complete, the City of St. Cloud will be providing green hydrogen to many St. Cloud businesses and organizations. A few of them have submitted letters of support, which are in your packets. And I'm going to leave the bulk of this presentation to Tracy.
Welcome to committee, Ms. Hodel. Please go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Absolutely. Is it laptop too quick for the presentation? Potentially.
Maybe? Yeah.
Okay, it's not showing it.
Is that,
You want to try laptop one?
does she need some technical help?
I think it's the right one, but it's not showing the presentation.
Is it plugged in here? This is laptop one.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, wait,
Sorry about that. You
We
might have
understand
that in your
technical
handouts too,
difficulties.
so we can just look at it and reference the handouts as well. So thank you, Co-Chair Coombe and Co-Chair Zawinski, unless you know how to get that going.
We'll give them a chance and see if they can get it.
There you go.
Okay.
Look at that.
People.
There we go. Well
All right,
done. Thank you
perfect.
for your help.
Yes, thank you
Go
for your
ahead, Ms.
patience,
Hodo.
everybody. Thank you, Co-Chair Coombe and Co-Chair Zawinski, members of the committee. Thank you for your time today in hearing this bill. My name is Tracy Hodel. I'm a Public Services Director for the City of St. Cloud. I'm here today to talk about a groundbreaking project, a treatment facility at our treatment facility that has the potential to position Minnesota at the forefront of global energy innovation, the St. Cloud Green Hydrogen Project. This project will be the first of its kind in the world, a treatment facility utilizing all the end products electrolysis process. So we'll be utilizing the hydrogen, of course, the oxygen, and the waste heat. There's a significant amount of waste heat that comes from the electrolysis process that we'll be able to use on site to reduce our natural gas needs at the facility. We've been working on this project for 3 years now. The electrolyzer is on order and is expected to be delivered this fall. We are at about 30% design with the remaining components, so we're essentially designing around the unit that we purchased. And however, we're at a point where we've encountered a challenge, which is grid capacity. So currently, the City of St. Cloud does have excess renewable energy being produced at the facility. We have 4 solar arrays. We have a combined heat and power, 2 engines on site. We have biogas storage. And so to be able to control that with the available grid capacity, we have controls in place at the facility. So when we designed the scope of this project, we had assumed that we would be able to use those controls to minimize what was and meet our limit as far as what can go back on the grid. However, our utility provider now is no longer in the position to extend those controls to meet our needs due to those grid capacity concerns. In response, we've identified a battery system that will allow this project to keep moving forward. So kind of thinking outside the box and how can we keep moving this project forward so we have that hydrogen to be used at our facility and within our community. We are requesting $3.5 million in RDA account funding to help address this missing piece to keep moving this project forward. If you refer to the criteria in the statute, it outlines in there some of the key criteria that these funds should be intended for is to stimulate research and development, implementation of innovative renewable energy projects that reduce demand, increase flexibility and efficiency, and encourage grid modernization through energy storage and load control. I couldn't think of a more perfect project for the criteria listed in this RDA account that this project matches. The next slide here I wanted to show, and these bubbles here are kind of highlighting those key components of the statute. So this is an overview of our facility, and many of you from this committee actually visited our facility back in November of 2023. You might remember your little gift bag that you had with poop to power, and you had your Struvite vials, and also got a little complimentary roll of toilet paper to take with you to remember the visit to our facility. So this slide here, I just want to overview kind of all the renewable energy projects that we have on site. We have the 4 solar arrays that I mentioned. We have the combined heat and power. You can kind of see these 2 Yumbacher engines, 633 kW engines here on the south side here of the graphic here. We produce that biosolids product that is injected in the field, and we have the fertilizer product that is sold, and the phosphorus is taken off site to where areas where phosphorus is needed. And everything in the green highlights the new components that we're looking at adding to the system. So we're adding a 5th solar array. We're hoping to add a battery backup system, a microgrid controller to the system to power that electrolyzer to help control and provide consistent power to the electrolyzer. And then again, we'll have all those 3 end products to use on site. The success of all of these previous projects is a testament to St. Cloud's ability to make these innovative projects happen. Green hydrogen has a wide range of applications across industries such as manufacturing, transportation, heating, and power generation. This project will play a crucial role in decarbonizing several key sectors, create jobs in Minnesota, and provide significant benefits to utility ratepayers statewide. However, we need your support to continue to make this progress. Without funding, we'll be forced to pause the project until we have grid capacity concerns restored, or at the very best, we would be able to move forward with only a limited amount of hydrogen being able to be produced. This would directly impact several key off-takers who have expressed strong interest in utilizing the hydrogen itself. This project isn't just about building a hydrogen facility, it's about reshaping the future of energy in Minnesota and demonstrating what is possible when we invest in solutions that are both environmentally and economically beneficial. We are excited about the potential of this project and the lasting impacts it will have on our state. I want to thank you for considering our request.
And thank you for being here. And the next testifier is Dr. Cherney Hendrick. Sorry, I didn't want to get it backwards. My apologies. Dr. Cherney Hendrick from Fresh Energy. Welcome to committee. Go ahead and state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Co-Chair Acom, Co-Chair Swedzinski, and committee members. My name is Margaret Cherney Hendrick, and I am testifying today on behalf of Fresh Energy. Fresh Energy is a 30-year-old Minnesota-based nonpartisan nonprofit. We work to shape and drive bold policy solutions to achieve equitable, carbon-neutral economies. We appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts in support of House File 2366 today. Minnesota has made great strides in decarbonizing the electric sector, and as of 2023, thanks to the leadership of the legislature, we are on a path to 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040. Now, to avoid the worst impacts of climate change, we must turn our attention to other sectors of the economy. At Fresh Energy, we've been working on decarbonizing buildings and the transportation sector for years, but we're also moving forward to confront emissions from the industrial sector. As part of this work, Fresh Energy is evaluating the role hydrogen can play in building a carbon-neutral economy. Hydrogen has long held the promise as a climate solution because, unlike fossil fuels, hydrogen does not emit carbon dioxide when combusted. At Fresh Energy, we believe green hydrogen is the most promising technology for producing hydrogen and meeting our climate goals. At its core, green hydrogen is the production of hydrogen gas using carbon-free renewable electricity like wind, solar, or hydropower. The process utilizes renewable electricity to power an electrolyzer, as we just heard, which separates water into hydrogen gas and oxygen. The use of green hydrogen in strategic, hard-to-abate end uses where production and consumption can be co-located is Fresh Energy's gold standard for reducing emissions. St. Cloud's green hydrogen project at the Nutrient Energy Water Recovery Facility is an excellent example of one such use case. To spur the hydrogen economy in Minnesota, growing family-sustaining clean energy jobs, and demonstrate best practices for production and deployment of green hydrogen, Fresh Energy supports House File 2366. We appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on this important issue. Thanks for your time today, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
And thank you for your testimony. First on the list, we have Representative Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Wolgamott stand-in, Representative Hollins. So I just want to make sure that I understand the process. Really what you're doing is you're leveraging the on-site solar. You want to maximize that by putting it in a battery. So you're making sure that the green energy is not being quote unquote like wasted by being put on the grid or somewhere else. And you're because you have a wastewater treatment facility, you have piping, you have access to water. So you're bringing those two things together: the solar that's already on site and kind of access to water, because those are the two things that you really need for this project. Is that correct?
Ms. Hodel.
Thank you, Co-Chair Akum. Representative Jones, yes, we do have solar on site and we do have water. It does require high purity water to run through that system, so we're still evaluating if it's something that we can use our treated effluent or if we'd have to use a different or drinking water supply for it. But the other key component that we have our treatment facility that we're incorporating in this is the biogas recovery piece. So we have the combined heat and power. So we're converting with the process that we have on site. It kind of acts like your stomach, your anaerobic digestion, where we're able to produce biogas. So we can run that through our engines, and then we have that available fuel source too. So it's not just the solar that's going to be powering it. And we partner with several different industries, or food and beverage industries, to bring that waste to us. It has a high energy content, and it usually is much lower cost for them to bring it to us. So sometimes there's times where we have to actually flare that because we have so much gas being produced. So this way we have a way to use that with the electrolyzer on site, and we can store that energy and use it when we need it.
Representative Jones, any follow-up?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you, and thank you, Ms. Hodel, for that. So you are then using the methane as like a secondary fuel source as a greener fuel source for, I guess it is green, for producing the hydrogen, or for the electrolysis process, yeah. So you're burning, then you have to burn the methane, correct?
Ms. Hodel.
Thank you, Chair Akum and Representative Jones, that, yes, exactly. So we are using that as another green energy fuel source to power the electrolysis process, correct?
Thank you so much for helping me understand this.
Next on the list, we have Chair Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking at your slide there, very good. Who is the utility there in St. Cloud where this would be at?
Co-Chair Zwinski, that is XL Energy.
XL Energy is there? Okay.
Yes.
And then kind of looking at, so the money primarily, the $3.5 million is, Madam Chair, Ms. Hodel, it's to put a battery in? Is that correct?
Ms. Hodel.
Thank you, Chair Akum, Co-Chair Zwinski. Yes, so the $3.5 million is for the battery system and the microgrid controller to be able to maximize the production of the hydrogen being generated from that process, because we're not able to connect to the grid at this time.
Chair Swedzinski.
Chair, Mrs. Hodel, and then from the utility XL, how much, one of the reasons you said is that they need a system upgrade, and that's why this battery is necessary. What did the utility say, how much did they say that upgrade would cost to upgrade the lines coming in, or whatever that would be?
Ms. Hodel.
Thank you, Chair Akum. Chair Zwinski, what we've been informed is that we would have to complete a study. And with that study would be closer to anywhere from $60,000 to $90,000 with the study. And then they had shared with us that the study would take some time and the improvements would take some time, and they were looking at multiple years and that multiple millions of dollars. And since it would be something we would need and we were number one on the queue, it would be fully St. Cloud's responsibility for those feeder improvements.
Any follow-up, Chair
Sounds good.
Swedzinski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So potentially multi-million dollars for the upgrade for the grid. Okay, all right. And then just as a percent, Madam Chair, Mrs. Hodel, as a percentage, kind of looking at the generation capacity of that biogas, is that an expandable portion? You know, so if you're looking at your potential load from a cost-benefit analysis, are you currently using all the methane produced off the facility? Like, you could potentially run that through another generator? Would that, like, how much potential capacity is left there with that portion of the generation?
Chair Zwinski, so we actually have quite a bit of additional capacity within our primary digesters. It's really dependent on the source that's coming in. So we have the food and beverage industry that's bringing a lot of the high-strength waste that has the energy. We have energy within municipal solids as well, but the food and beverage industry have a lot more energy within that product. And we're actually going through some digester improvements to even increase that capacity. So yes, there is a possibility that we could even expand the use of the biogas. And we're actually looking at this food waste diversion program where we're trying to have a large feasibility, or we have a feasibility study completed to collect all the food waste with a depackaging unit and create more fuel source, which would be more of a consistent fuel feed source to the digester to produce more methane gas to use on site.
And then just a final question, Representative.
Chair Swedzinski. Sounds
good. And then Ms. Hodel, just kind of expanding that conversation, have you done a price cost analysis? Because, you know, by nature, a battery is a quick deployable asset when you need it or whatnot. Have you looked at if it sounds like you have expert gas and an engine that just burns gas is probably cheaper than a battery. Have you looked at what that would cost to kind of improve that temporary need that you would need, and what that potential cost would be versus $3.5 million for a battery? And that's my final question.
Thank you, Chair Akum. Chair Zwinski, so we would need to have more sources coming in. So that's the missing loop on that, where yes, we have the ability to expand, but we don't have that food source or that fuel source. And we can invest in a new engine, probably likely be $1 million, $1.5 million for another engine the same size as ours. But at this time, we don't have that source coming in. So this battery system is that missing piece to keep us moving on track, being able to provide that hydrogen for all these off-takers that are extremely interested. We got Metrobus interested, Niron Magnetics. I'm not sure if many of you have heard of that new company coming into Minnesota as well. And then we have our Metrobus, our public transit, our New Flyer of America is wanting to build hydrogen fuel cell buses in our area. So the battery system is to get us there. And once we do get on the grid, that battery system can help modernize that grid and help make it more stable and help with load control for the utility provider in the future. So it's more of an interim to keep this project moving forward.
Great. Next on the list, we have Representative Carroll.
Thank you, Chair Acom. And Ms. Hodel, thank you for being here. We met a couple years ago during your tour. I was so impressed with you and all the things that you're doing in St. Cloud. Very innovative, very forward-thinking. And St. Cloud's lucky to have you. I was trying to recruit you to Plymouth, but I don't think you would come. And also, we're on the Met Council waste system.
Yeah.
But I'm impressed with what you're doing there. So really, this is just a commentary on your innovation, your creativity, and your knowledge. So thank you very much.
Not seeing a question there. Next on the list, Representative Kraft. Thank you for the comments, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nice to see you, Ms. Hodel. I just, like, what I love about this, mine's just a comment too, is that we're kind of making the most use of waste and things that we wouldn't use otherwise and putting them to good use. And I think the model you're talking about here, if we can work it out and stuff, it is the kind of thing that could have so many other impacts, across the state and beyond. So let's just use stuff that we're creating anyway, waste kinds of things, and turn it into good stuff. So thank you.
And final question to Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project reminds me a lot of green fertilizer projects. I'm familiar with a couple of them to a certain degree. And, they separate water using a lot of electricity. And the one thing they talk about with those projects, and maybe yours is different, but they recommend changing the hydrogen to ammonia because it's a whole lot less explosive. So is that a situation in your project with working with hydrogen, that it's not as stable as ammonia, for example?
Ms. Hodel.
Thank you, Chair Coom. Representative Anderson, we are not incorporating ammonia as part of the carrying of the hydrogen or the storage at this time, but you're exactly right. It does help with transport and things like that. So it's something we can definitely look into, but as part of this project, the ammonia addition is not included.
Any follow-up, Ms. No, okay, Representative? Any closing comments, Representative?
Thank you so much for taking the time to hear the bill.
Great. With that, the bill is laid over. Next on our agenda is House File 2423, and Representative Tabke is going to make his way to the testifying table. So with that, I will go ahead and move that House File 2423 be laid over for possible inclusion. And I will also introduce the author's amendment, DE1. So Representative Tabke moves the DE1 to get the bill in the shape he would like. Any discussion to the DE? I think it's a little bit.
It's in the shape where he wants it.
Seeing any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. With that, Representative Tabke, please go ahead and tell us about your bill.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members. So this bill is to support emerald ash borer wood disposal. And so we have a facility in Shakopee that many of you have heard about called Koto Electric that is in partnership with RAR Malting. And what they do is they take dried organic material and turn that into electricity. And so they do that. It's a really great program between RAR and Koto Electric. And what happens there is they take the leftover waste, organic waste from RAR malting, from the malting process, which is an organic process of sprouting rye and a whole bunch of other things, barley, sorry, my bad. And so there are And then also hulls from oats, from making Cheerios and different things. And what this would do is allow emerald ash borer waste that is that is all over the metro and we are unable to process the great volume that we have of emerald ash borer waste at this time. What this would do is allow us to have another facility to process that waste and turn it into electricity that will be used and saving energy in Minnesota and in Shakopee. And so I have Mr. Stacy Cook here from Code Electric to talk more about the process. Madam Chair.
Welcome to committee, Mr. Cook. Go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Acom, Chair Swedzinski, and members, and Representative Tabke. So my name is Stacy Cook. I'm Vice President of Corporate Sustainability for RAR. Coda Energy is a wholly owned subsidiary of RAR Corp. And I also have the duty to be president of Coda Energy. So really, a couple of years ago, we sought some funding for a dryer project so that we could utilize the emerald ash borer waste that's excess in our market for energy and heat, or electricity and heat production on campus. This is a slightly different problem. We're working on that project. We're going to add that utilization. But through our work, I've been working in the Wastewood stakeholder group for the last several months. And really the problem is a lot of these arborists have nowhere to go with this wood waste. We have the Pig's Eye Wood Yard can process 250,000 tons a year for the St. Paul Cogen boiler. It's doing a bang-up job. However, they are closed about 60% of the time this year because they're at capacity and full. A lot of these smaller arborists that do have wood yards, the scale of that capacity was really for the typical tree die-off markets you have, the problem you have in the metro, and not for the extra 500 and plus thousand tons a year that are hitting the ground that are just ash trees in the 7-county metro for the next several years. So we have a shortfall of processing capacity of over 200,000 tons a year just in the 7-county metro with what's currently coming down just with the EAB infestation. So seeing nobody stepping up to provide that capacity and knowing that you have to have an end user in any wood sort facility to where you have active flow of product through it so you don't have piles, you just fill it up and it starts heating up and it self-combusts. We thought we might as well bring some additional utilization to the space. There's some processing capacity. Like I said, we already have the other project that's in the works to add 114,000 tons per year of use of the material once we can dry it. But we also need the pre-processing that material before we're hauling it through town and into that unit to dry it for biofuel for our facility. And also a location where we can sort some of those waste wood materials coming in. I mean, if everybody's all at capacity and their wood yards are full, they have no space to sort out saw logs and maybe segregate some of that out for maybe some fiber feed for other digesters or other renewable projects around the area as well. So just 500,000 ton problem. We only have a couple 100,000 tons of capacity meeting that need. We'd like to add that other. It would provide another outlet, stabilize tipping costs across the metro, because a lot of these small arborists are paying a fortune to try to dispose of their wood material, and they're hauling it farther and farther out of the metro to get rid of it. So thank you, Chair Acom. Thank you, Chair Swedzinski and members.
And thank you for your testimony. I have a quick question before I turn it over to my colleagues on the committee, and that is, how far of a radius do you expect the tree waste to be coming from?
It's going to be coming almost primarily from the 7-county metro area inside of it. Currently, what you have is a lot of the arborists are stockpiling piles of wood on the west metro in hopes that when the Pig's Eye Wood Yard opens up for deliveries again, they can rush over there and get that wood into there. And we have nothing of any capacity on the west metro. So rather than having all that cross metro traffic, diesel traffic back and forth, and then having piles decomposing and potentially starting on fire, we would have a very large processing site that can handle a good majority of the problem on each side of the metro, so we don't have that storage and transload issue.
Great, thank you for that. Questions from Representative Carroll?
Thank you, Chair. just briefly, I was on Plymouth City Council before I came to the legislature, and at least 10 years ago, we started becoming aware of emerald ash borer and planning for it, and how devastating it was going to become and is now. And so my question to you is, do you have a sense of when this disease will have run its course?
Mr. Cook.
Chair Acom, Chair Swedzinski, Representative. Cambium Carbon has done a couple of studies on that for Partnership on Waste and Energy. One was the utilization capacity, and that was released in the fall of 2022. A more recent one was just released here, starting in 2025, was the processing capacity. But they are projecting, the infestation actually picked up speed unexpectedly over the last couple of years. Year over year, the ash trees dying in the 7-county metro increased 50% in just 1 year, and that wasn't the steady increase and gain in infestations that they were projecting originally. So it's moved quicker, so the volume builds are happening faster. It's still projected to run through 2032, 2033, and it'll start tailing off. But we've also got other infestations and disease. The spruce budworm is knocking down balsam trees, spruce trees. You've got oak wilt, that's still spreading. We're trying to get ahead of that. The pine beetle, there's all kinds of different insects looking to chew on our trees. And we're gonna continue having waves of other types of things that we have extra wood waste we have to dispose of. So as far as potentially being the owner-operator of a facility like that, I have no concern over volume. There's all kinds of volume.
Any
and
brief
there will
follow-up,
continue to
Representative
be.
Carroll? Next on the list, we have Representative Igo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the testifier. Gave a good explanation there of all the things that we're facing. You know, emerald ash borer obviously isn't native to Minnesota, comes from China. Really interesting tour if you ever want to do it. Go up to the border and see the rail cars that come over and get inspected, and you'll see the poor pallets made in China that aren't treated, and that's why it got here. But those other pests, if you will, are just on cyclical cycles that we continually deal with and have this waste. So I'm in full support of this idea, right? So I had a bill here about a month ago on biomass and making it carbon neutral. So I guess my question to the testifier would be, how much energy are you looking, would you be producing with this? Well, that'll be my first question.
Mr. Cook, and if we can be brief in our questions and responses, we do have one more bill.
Chair Acom, Chair Swedzinski, Representative Igo, the amount we're going to process at CODA would produce approximately 66,000 megawatt hours a year, and it produces approximately 1 million BTUs per year.
Brief follow-up, Representative Igo.
120,000 tons.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for that. I mean, again, it shows how we're using something that would just be emitting carbon and producing waste, but we're turning it into renewable power. And I guess my follow-up question would maybe be to the bill author. Sounds like I found a co-author for my biomass bill to make biomass carbon neutral. I think that would probably help out your testifier quite a bit on making this power a little bit more marketable and making it more affordable for the people that are going to be using it.
Next on the list is Representative Anderson. We'll close up with Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I support the idea. I support the bill because it's going to be, it is a huge problem, but it's all across Minnesota. And the town back where I live in Glenwood, they had some retired guys go out last fall and actually walk around the city, and with their phones, they pinned every elm tree or ash tree that showed symptoms, and there's hundreds of them in that one city, small city. So, and they're in Excel's territory. So I'm wondering if this could be expanded, maybe a different bill, to provide some help for cities all across Minnesota in Excel territory that are going to need some financial help with cleaning up the mess made by the trees that are dying and diseased. But again, I support your bill and would look for some additional help in this fund.
I think that having the maybe facilities to burn these waste trees is maybe more appropriate to have them regionally located. So it might make sense to be thinking about a centrally located place in northern Minnesota or in central Minnesota, to your point. Final questions, or Chair Swazinski?
Thank you. And just to kind of along that same line, just from a process standpoint, like what, it's $5 million, is this a couple guys with some chainsaws, or is this a machine that will process this? And then from a capacity standpoint, you know, how much do you think that will reduce? You said it's a cost issue of tipping fees that's presenting some of this as well. Kind of how will that address those two things?
Mr. Cook, or did Representative Tabke?
I just want to state quickly, and then I can turn it over to Mr. Cook. But from what the bill will do, what it'll provide is making sure that it will have an asphalt plate that we'll be able to work from, and it has hoop houses and it has excavators and then grabbers and other things like that in order just to do the processing and grinding of the material so that it's ready to be dried and burned. And so that's what this will fund and what this will create. And so I can let Mr. Cook finish that off.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Chair Acom, Chair Swazinski. This is, you know, excavator, to have all the equipment you need on the site to receive the material, scale it into the site, security fencing, blacktop pad, adequate space, and like an excavator with a thumb to be able to sort out the saw logs from the tops and the limbs that would be processed immediately. Saw logs would be looking for upcycle markets as we try to increase the throughput through the site. So that's wheel loaders, so it's other equipment as well. Total price tag probably end up running close to 10. So I think that's my answer.
Any closing comments, Representative Tabke?
No, I just appreciate the conversation, and I really appreciate Stacy coming and talking through this with everyone, and appreciate everyone's support. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, the bill is laid over. And final bill on the agenda for today is House File 771, authored by Representative Kraft, who is making his way to the testifier table. So to save time, I will move that House File 771 be laid over for possible inclusion. And Representative Kraft does have an author's amendment coded the DE2. So Representative Kraft moves the DE2 to get the bill in the shape he would like to have it considered. Any discussion to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails, and the amendment is adopted. With that, Representative Kraft, please go ahead and tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'm happy to be carrying House File 771 that would create a supplemental grant program to build on the Federal Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP. LIHEAP provides vital relief during the winter and has been doing so for over 40 years. Income-qualified households receive financial assistance to help with heating bills. However, the need is, and has been for many years, way more than what's available. Only about a quarter of eligible Minnesota households receive assistance. And unlike most other states, including even our neighbors in North Dakota, Minnesota does not provide assistance during the summer months. And with our increasing temperatures, cooling needs are just going up. And by the way, the majority of utility shutoffs occur in the summer. So we've worked with all stakeholders to figure out the best way to address the need. This bill would do so by leveraging the existing program and processes already set up under LIHEAP. And you can see from the handouts that the bill has broad support, even from organizations that may not typically agree on much. To summarize the bill, it provides state funding to supplement the federal LIHEAP program. Currently, Minnesota does not provide any funding in this program. It would allow to address more folks, but also to keep the program open during the summer months to help with cooling needs and prevent shutoffs. And it also opens the door for these households to make their bills affordable in a more long-term way, such as with weatherization assistance. Weatherization assistance uses the same application, and other utility affordability programs, which typically require recipients to be receiving energy assistance from LIHEAP. I'd also want to point out that this is primarily a greater Minnesota bill. as 75% of energy assistance today goes to households outside the 7-county metro area where energy burdens tend to be higher. There is a map in your handout. It's in black and white, so you might not see it as well, but we do have some color ones. One of my testifiers, Annie Levinson-Falk, you should come on up, Annie, has some. And so I would encourage folks to grab a colored handout afterwards so you can see how your districts are impacted. One of the reasons for this outside of the greater metro area is the higher prevalence of delivered fuels, which tend to be substantially more expensive than other alternatives. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to my testifiers.
And welcome to committee, Ms. Levinson-Falk from Citizens Utility Board. I'd like to also invite up Tricia. It looks like she's making her way from MREA. Go ahead, Ms. Levinson-Falk.
Thank you, Chair Acom, Chair Swedzinski, and committee members. My name is Annie Levinson-Falk. I'm the Executive Director of the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota, which is a nonprofit advocate for energy consumers. We've been working on this proposal since 2022 with many of the supporters that you see listed on the handout in your packet. Members who served on this committee in last biennium might remember hearing it in 2023. The bill addresses an important need, and we appreciate you taking the time for today's hearing. For too many households, the cost of energy has been and continues to be unaffordable. A good measure of affordability is energy burden, the percent of household income that's spent on energy, and this figure is very high for many Minnesotans, as Representative Kraft said, particularly in rural areas with lower incomes and higher energy costs. A rough rule of thumb is that an energy burden between about 4 to 6% is considered affordable, and anything above 6 is usually considered energy burdened. And you can see on that map that there are large portions of greater Minnesota, in particular, where the average household spending is more than this. So it's a really, when I saw that map, I found it to be really striking. Affordability challenges were exacerbated in the years following the pandemic when many Minnesotans faced financial strains. We saw utility arrears go way up. And those figures have come down somewhat since their peak, particularly helped by the natural gas prices coming back down to a more of a quote-unquote normal level. But customers of the regulated utilities in Minnesota still owe $130 million in past due bills. And that figure doesn't include customers of cooperative and municipal utilities or households that might struggle to get together the $800 or $900 that you need for a propane tank refill or others that are depending on delivered fuels. With the compounding pressures of inflation going up, housing costs going up, households that were having trouble before are falling farther behind on bills. Unfortunately, utility shutoffs are also way up. In 2024, more than 91,000 Minnesota households were disconnected for non-payment. The Citizens Utility Board has tracked this data going back a decade, and that far exceeds any year for which we have data. Most of the shutoffs occur between June and September after the cold weather rule protections expire and when energy assistance is not available. Facing a utility shutoff can have really severe effects on a household. According to national research, a third of Americans have gone without necessities like food or medicine in order to pay utility bills. 69% of Americans who took out a payday loan did so in order to pay a regular expense like a utility bill. And when there are heat waves or cold snaps, demand for payday loans surges. Lack of cooling during periods of extreme heat can be a serious health risk, particularly for seniors and other vulnerable individuals. And cooling needs have increased dramatically in Minnesota in the 45 years since the Energy Assistance Program began. The average Twin Cities summer now requires 43% more cooling than it did in the early 80s. This is why the majority of states provide energy assistance in the summer, including other northern states like, as Representative Kraft said, North Dakota. We've worked hard with utilities, service providers, low-income advocacy groups, and dozens of stakeholders to provide a proposal to address these problems in an efficient manner. We understand that the budget pressures that the state is under this year and appreciate your consideration of this pressing need should funding be available.
Thank you. Next, we have Tricia Leet with MREA. Go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Tricia Leet, and I'm the Government Affairs Representative for the Minnesota Rural Electric Association. We're the statewide association representing 50 member-owned not-for-profit electric cooperatives who provide power to 1.7 million Minnesotans, covering 85% of the state's geography. Thank you, Representative Kraft, for bringing House File 771 forward to address the critical issue of keeping electricity on and affordable for all Minnesotans. Electric cooperatives strive to deliver reliable, affordable, and safe electricity and are member-driven in this mission. Costs for basic services like electricity fall the hardest on low-income Minnesotans, and electric cooperatives serve some of the poorest counties in the state. Over the past few years, we have seen high inflation put upward pressure on goods and services across the economy, including energy. Minnesotans are feeling this pinch across the state, with more Minnesotans falling further behind on their energy bills than ever. Every year, we see a trend where our past due receivables build from the end of summer, when electric bills can be some of the highest, into October, when energy assistance resources become available. Making these resources available throughout the year would allow us to provide better support to our members and reduce the number of disconnects that occur annually. This change would also level out the demand for these resources, which in turn help improve service and response time for recipients. We appreciate the committee's focus on proposals like HF 771 that address the affordability of essential electricity. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you for being here. And we're going to next go to Amanda Mackey, who's testifying remotely. So we're going to ask her to unmute herself and go. And while she's testifying, maybe Mr. Sulam can make his way to the testifying table. So Ms. Mackey, go ahead and proceed. Introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Amanda Mackey, and I'm the Executive Director of Minnesota Valley Action Council. We're the community action agency that delivers LIHEAP to the 9 counties in south central Minnesota. MVAC provided energy assistance to 9,200 households last year, ensuring that families and seniors could remain warm during our cold Minnesota winters. I'm here to support House File 771 to expand on the federal low-income home energy assistance program to include benefits in the summer months. As you know, we're lucky enough to experience both extremes of summer heat and winter cold here, which places a significant burden on our low-income households. At this time, we're only able to relieve a portion of this burden during winter months due to the lack of funding. Federal funding levels have dropped below what they were 15 years ago. This means smaller grants for households while energy costs continue to rise. In January, Excel proposed a nearly 10% increase in rates for 2025, and as a previous testifier mentioned, we also work with many delivered fuel vendors who have been increasing prices as well. Meanwhile, our customers are not experiencing corresponding increases in wages, especially our seniors who are on fixed incomes, which are the majority of our LIHEAP applicants. Some report having to choose between paying for their medicine or their heat, a choice no one should have to make in Minnesota. It's also critical to recognize that the lower funding levels reduces the resources that our agencies have to deliver these services, as we work with 2010 level funding to attempt to pay 2025 wages. This means we're employing fewer staff to deliver the same level of service and to process the same number of applications, which means a delay in service. We, like many energy assistance service providers, have to lay off our staff in the summer once the program season has ended. This means we're hiring temporary staff to deliver the program, increasing training and ramp-up time each fall. This bill will help address some of these barriers by expanding assistance to cover the cooling season and allowing us to maintain consistent staff running through the program year, which is a formula for a more efficient program. At the end of the normal energy assistance season, when the cold weather rule expires, we always see a significant increase in shutoffs and big utility bills, some in the thousands of dollars. These arrive in June when the cooling season begins and households can't afford that increase in electric costs. The majority of MVAC's service area is rural, with an aging housing stock that averages well over 40 years old. This means less energy efficient dwellings that create an overburdening of costs for heating and cooling. In addition to this, I want to share just a short story of the impact energy assistance can have on one of our clients. Jean came to MVAC with a shutoff notice last February from her heat vendor after her partner Jim passed away. She found herself unable to keep up with all of her bills, explaining that she'd been a longtime caregiver and hadn't worked outside the home in many years. Her small Social Security check, she had a small Social Security check, but she had no partner benefits because they never married. And she was embarrassed about asking for help because she had never needed this in the past. She covered her mouth with her hand when she spoke to us because she had several broken and missing teeth. So we helped her to get her heat turned back on that day with crisis funds. And because we're a community action agency, we connected her with our senior employment program. She began working in our thrift store as part of a subsidized employment program, but she was such a great worker, she was quickly hired on as a regular employee with full benefits. In December, she came into my office to show off her new dentures that she was now able to afford with her dental insurance and income, and she could not stop smiling through her happy tears. She credits energy assistance not just with helping with her bills, but helping her turn her life around and maintain her independence. Thank you for the opportunity to share my support of this important bill. I urge this committee to advance and ensure that Minnesota is able to provide a year-round robust energy program to support some of our most vulnerable households.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. And last testifier, Mr. Solom. Thank you for being here. Go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Chair Acom, Chair Zwinski, members of the committee. I'm Ken Solom, Director of Government Relations and Senior Counsel for the Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association. We too lend our support to this bill. I'm not going to repeat the testimony that's been said, but I also add an angle of not only is it helpful to the recipient of the funds and what they can do getting out from under their burdensome bills, but it helps the utilities at the municipal level keep their rates lower because you don't have to pass the default payment on to others. At the municipal level, our rates are basically passed through. What our costs are become the bills for the consumers. And so by having an emergency backup system to help pay the bills for those who fall into hard times, it allows everything to remain at a steadier level and therefore keep increases from occurring from those unpaid bills. So we've very supportive of this bill and hope that you'll be able to give it serious consideration as the omnibus is put together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solom. As I look to my colleagues for questions, I have a quick one, and it was touched on by Ms. Mackey, who indicated that federal funding is about 15% down compared to previous years in the LIHEAP program. And so given some of the uncertainty at the federal level, how does the funding currently look towards LIHEAP coming here to Minnesota? So I bet that would go to Ms. Levinson-Falk.
Thank you, Chair Acom, and I know there at least were folks from Commerce that could probably definitely could provide more information than me. But my understanding is that, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, that Minnesota received about 90% of this year's appropriation already, and the other 10% was just passed in the congressional CR that just passed. So for this year, I think we're expecting full funding. There's a lot of uncertainty going forward.
I appreciate that, and Commerce has made their way to the table, so maybe you can fill us in with a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Chair Acom, members. My name is Michael Schmitz. I'm the Director of the Energy Assistance Program for the Minnesota Department of Commerce. So we've received about $112 million so far this year. As was indicated, we are expecting some additional funds from the recently passed continuing resolution. Waiting for that money, though, we do expect to potentially run short of additional funds before that money does come. And so we're really hopeful that it comes soon. But yes, the funding is more limited than it has been in the past.
And so, Mr. Schmitz, how does that $112 million compare to previous years?
So last year, we received $125 million. The year before that, it was about $160 million. And then the year before that, as part of the American Rescue Plan, plus our regular LIHEAP funding, it was over $250 million. So you can see it's gone down very dramatically recently, but it's been very stable at this between $115 to $120 million for over 15 years. And when you take into consideration inflation, that's really a decreasing amount.
That's great. I appreciate that. Just helps kind of frame the discussion and the challenge that we're having here. And while I know this is going to be a challenging budget year, I think it's typically programs like this are something in committee we learn about early on in session as we learn about some of the programs that are offered and the stakeholders that are a part of this committee. And since we have a little bit of an atypical session, I thought it was important that we get this bill in front of the committee and in front of members to be able to kind of see the issue, and so we can all be thinking creatively about how we can work to address this issue. And so we do have questions from a few members. We're going to start with Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. I thought it was interesting, you mentioned that, I thought 43% more cooling in the summertime because of increased heat in Minneapolis or Minnesota. What about in the wintertime? Has there been less heating necessitated because of warmer weather?
And who would like to take that? Representative Kraft?
Madam Chair, I'm actually not sure of the balance in that. If heating needs have gone down, I imagine at some net level they have. I think that with the level of need that's needed, there probably is still more need that can be met. But your point is just from a logic perspective, one would think that the heating needs are a bit less and the cooling needs are a bit more.
Any follow-up? No? Mr. Schmidt, did you want to add to that?
Yes, Chair Acom, members. So I can't tell you for the entire state, but for the folks who apply for energy assistance, we track that very carefully and we use their energy costs as the basis for determining the benefit amount. And we have seen those costs increase. And I think it's more because of the cost of fuel has been going up. Sure. And it's variable between different fuel types, but overall the trend has been slightly upward.
Thank you, Mr. Schmitz. That's helpful context. Next question, Representative Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Kraft, for bringing this. I just wanted to make a comment about something that I had heard from the city of Bloomington, particularly around this program, because their city hears about this need in the summertime, and they're unfortunately not able to sign people up during the summertime. The other thing about summer is that's when a lot of cities and communities do community engagement, and so that's the opportunity to really, make sure that people who need this program are being hooked up with that. And so a part that I really appreciate about this as well, besides the money, which is really important, but really just opening that application season as well. So thank you.
That's a good point. And I will just say I met with, on Hunger Day at the Capitol, I met with a local food shelf that serves part of my community, and they, as a food shelf, work to help with energy costs for folks. And so I think there are a lot of organizations and communities that are working to help assist members or communities. All right, seeing no other questions, last question. Oh, we're going to go to Mr. Weiner first. So close, Chair, almost. You're coming. All right, Representative Weiner.
Anytime I can cut off Chair Swazinski, I guess. Thank you for bringing this bill forward. We had a good discussion yesterday about some of the issues, and I think it really brings up a broader question. If the number you gave, 91,000, that's staggering. In a state that is purported to be so prosperous, why do we have so many people that are needing this? And until we fix the root cause of this problem, then we're putting a Band-Aid fix on it. So when I look at this, I say, why do we have so many people that are using this? Why do we have an increase? And when I look at it, I think over the last 10 years, our state budget has increased from $35 billion to $70 billion. And if you divvy that up per taxpayer, you're over $5,000 a person. How far would that go in those people's lives so that they wouldn't have to get a subsidy? When we look at inflation since COVID, we're looking at a 20% increase. So government has grown, inflation has grown, and then the need has grown. The best way for us to fix this problem is to actually let people keep more of their money so that we don't have to have them looking for subsidies. My area, Todd County, Wadena, is a couple of the poorest counties in the state. When their property taxes have increased 20, 30, 40%, they have a harder time paying these bills. And you know what they'd rather have? Just more money in their pocket so that they could pay their bills themselves. And I think until we really look at the core or the root cause of these problems, we're going to keep putting projects and other things in place, and it's a Band-Aid fix, but it doesn't solve the issue. And I would like to help solve the issue rather than keep putting Band-Aids on it. I would like to make sure that that 91,000 goes down to next to nothing. And we can do that, I think, when we say we look at our budget. Yes, we absolutely have to. when it's increased so much over the last 10 years, like I said, and over the last 2 years especially. I believe in Minnesota. I believe in Minnesotans. I believe they know what's best to do with their money. But when we tax them to the point where they can't afford their bills, then we're really crushing that entrepreneurial, that Minnesota spirit, and I think that's what we need to look at. Because I want to make sure that that 91,000 gets down to zero. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I will just say I have that, before I pass it over to Representative Kraft, I have that same goal. I would love for us to get that number down to zero. And I will also say I find it unfortunate that Minnesota is a net contributor to the federal government. We give a lot more in taxes to the federal government than we get back in services. And I would like to even that playing field. And so with that, Representative Kraft, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Wiener, I share your goal. And I also share your inclination to address root cause. Where we differ is on root cause. The people that we're talking about here that aren't able to pay their energy bills are generally ones in the state that probably have fairly low tax burdens because their incomes are so low. The issue here, like your really core issue, is that people's incomes are not high enough. That, if you look at around the country, right, what's happened over the past decades is that our income gap and wealth gap has grown and grown and grown. The top 10% of Americans hold 70% of U.S. wealth. The richest 1% in this country makes 139 times as much as the bottom 20%. Right? If we really want to address this root cause in Minnesota, we can't be doing things. What we need to be looking at is things like enhancing the child tax credit, which we did, and even more, and things that we can do to help those least fortunate among us to address these issues, which is things that I think we've been trying to do. What we should not be doing is what seems to be often the answer, at least at the federal level, is let's do tax cuts for the wealthy. The wealthy are doing fine and are able to pay their energy bills, are able to afford their food, are able to afford their housing. It's the folks at the lower end that are not. This is screaming out for action, and it's screaming out for truly addressing poverty. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And last questions or comments by Chair Swedzinski.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Kraft, for the bill. Just kind of, this would be maybe to the Department of Commerce, but it's just kind of from the new program standpoint in LIHEAP, just because it is a federal program, it's pass-through dollars. How much of the dollars go directly to homeowners? And then how much actually go to potentially ratepayer, either rate like utilities and or propane type business? How does that process kind of get funneled out?
Mr. Schmitz.
Chair Aiken, Chair Swedzinski, members, I think that's a great question. And the way that the program is designed, almost all of the benefits for homeowners actually go to the utilities so that they pay the energy bills directly. And so for the most part, we're not making direct payments to households. If that answers your question.
Chair Swedzinski.
Thank you. Madam Chair, you said indirect payments to households or direct payments?
We generally don't make direct payments to households as kind of a waste, fraud, and abuse measure. So to go to the utility instead so that it goes right to the energy costs.
Yep. So Madam Chair, so my understanding is that the dollars go straight from the LIHEAP program to the utility, and then that dollar is
credited
right to that account, right to that payment. And then, Madam Chair, and then also to the fine man from the Commerce Department, looking at one of the testifiers talked about $138 million of utility bills. I think that was just for potentially for rural electrics. What do we see statewide when it comes to unpaid utility bills that are ultimately getting passed on to other ratepayers? Do we track that? Is that part of the process? And kind of have you looked at that number and you track that within the department?
Mr. Schmitz, do you have that information?
I think that the number that was presented earlier is the number that we have for the regulated utilities, and then they're required to report on that, and then the other utilities and then delivered fuels don't report on those amounts, so we don't really have that information.
Sounds good.
Chair Suzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then just kind of looking at, from a cost perspective. If you look at Representative Baker's bill with the net metering bill, when we're looking at cost shifts from one ratepayer to the next, that's a particular area that whether we have a government program that does it, I mean, this is a prime example of who really does pay those bills. And Representative Baker, I appreciate your work on that bill, but those are a cost shift. And so ultimately, those are cost shifts that go on to lower income people. Government comes in, pays those people directly when they can't pay their higher utility bills, and then when they don't pay their utility bills, then those costs get shifted onto others, whether that's industrial users or the rest. And then from a cost perspective, if we're already seeing $138 million in utility bills, that's kind of your baseline. When you're looking at the 5 or 6 different things that are kind of first on their list, it's obviously your heating bill, electric bill, cell phone probably in the line, and then also how do you property tax, and then also how do you actually get to work? So your gas or car or utility, what are the base modes of that? So if we're already seeing $138 million, we can either, as Representative Wiener talked about, looking at, we could throw a Band-Aid on this, or we could actually go after what is driving the cost of energy up. Is it net metering? And can we have reform in that particular area? Is it eliminating the RDA? That's a tax of $30 or $40 million that could be going back to ratepayers. SIP program, that's 1.5% of every utility bill across the state to be told and how to spend that money rather than just putting those dollars back into. In a new era, when we have a 2040 bill, carbon-free, if it's to reduce energy use, when we're talking about electrifying the grid, and ultimately the electricity that will be flowing into homes is a carbon-free form of electricity, does it behoove the state then to get out of the way once again? And then ultimately, when it comes to addressing the costs of dollars going into people's homes, from their job back home, levering a new tax on a new program. When it comes to earn sick and safe time, when it comes to paid family leave, we're talking 1, 2, 3 percentages of people's individual income who are already not able to pay their bills, that is getting passed on to other people, that they're going to have less and less dollars. And so when the government's going to come in first, take that 2 or 3% off folks' paycheck, because we decided how to pay that money first, when we decided how to spend that money first before it gets into their house. So all those dollars are going to come out of programs just like this, whether it's $138 million of unpaid electric bills. That's the decisions that we're making. When we put St. Paul in front of houses, whether that's electrical policy, whether that's labor policy, whether that's driving a wedge between employees and employers, that's what we're doing. Day after day, policy after policy, and why it may not have a large cost on the bottom line of this committee, it has a large cost on the bottom line of businesses, families, and industry across the state. And how that's going to affect people's pocketbooks is yet to be seen. And so I appreciate this bill. It sounds like we're already short when it comes to winter, when it comes to the amount of need versus that. So I question in general whether or not we should be expanding it into summer when we already don't have the primary use for winter satisfaction on these dollars. But we do have a responsibility to taxpayers and ratepayers. And ultimately, when it comes to those baseline expenditures, when it comes to energy, when we have other things in the Department of Labor that Representative Baker is dealing with on a couple different avenues, I think we really should just, let's sit down, let's relax, let's look at finding some bipartisan support that will ultimately not just put Band-Aids, but let's solve issues. And with that, thank you.
Seeing no question, any closing comments, Representative Kraft?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the committee members for the discussion. While this is about energy assistance, it really is about housing, health, and family stability. The American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, nonprofit research organization, researched energy burden in 2020 and found that high energy burdens are correlated with greater risk for respiratory diseases, increased stress and economic hardship, and difficulty in moving out of poverty. This is an important and targeted program for households who really need the assistance. This is a program we should do. But I do want to, just I'm not surprised with the comments. I think there's some things we can build on here with the comments of, oh, this is a indicator that we should get out of all these other programs that actually benefit Minnesotans' lives. No, what this is a canary in the coal mine for is that we need to address poverty, right? This is not the energy bills are too high. This is people don't make enough. And that's the kind of thing that we need to invest in to address this. That's the root cause. So thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate you laying this over.
Thank you, Representative Kraft. With that, the bill is laid over, and our committee for today is done. Thank you, members.